back with another tropical weather outlook. I wasn't expecting to be doing this again today on June 11th, as I usually post every Monday and Thursday, guys. So today, remember, I don't know if you guys remember yesterday on the last video, but I was noting an area of interest that I thought it wasn't listed by the National Hurricane Center, but it was near Cuba, and now it's moved into the western, the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So it's labeled Invest 90L, and I was a bit concerned about it yesterday. It wasn't labeled in Invest. I just saw a bunch of thunderstorms yesterday, but it was just labeled today as Invest 90L. And currently it has winds of 20 knots and a central pressure of 1,009 millibars. So, I'm currently now on Tropical Tidbits right now and selecting a Storm 90L Invest 90L. So that is the first area of interest for this year. And if I go to the imagery on satellite imagery, this is what it looks like. So give it a second to load. Here we are. So it was moving off of Cuba. Now it's off the coast of Florida. And it is an area of disorganized thunderstorms that is very, very large in size because it's stretching from Florida all the way to the Lucayan Archipelago. So it's in this area right here. This area. So it's a bit disorganized right now. That's why the NHC has only listed it, having it at a, I think, 10% chance of development within the next 48 hours and 20% within the next 7 days. So it's expected to move over Florida. Some of it is actually already over Florida, I think, by this point in time. So it's expected to move over Florida and going into the Atlantic Ocean. And it's supposed to skirt off to the northeast. In fact, I think some of it is already over Florida, as you guys can see. So it's probably going to move over Florida probably tonight and go over the Atlantic Ocean. But the impacts that this could deliver to Florida is heavy rainfall and possibly some heavy isolated and scattered thunderstorms over tonight into the early morning hours. So the folks in Florida, I'd recommend watch out for some heavy rainfall. I think probably around 2 to 3 inches or more, because this could deliver some heavy rainfall and possibly some pretty strong winds, and could go over Florida and into the Atlantic Ocean by the early morning hours of tomorrow. So that's Invest 90L. So I am going to go back to current storms. Okay. I'm going to go back to satellite imagery so I can give you guys a bigger picture of this. So it's labeled out here Invest 90L, but I want to give you guys a bigger picture of this. So I'm going to go into the Northwest Atlantic. Yeah, let's go to the Northwest Atlantic. So here we are. So, yes, here we are. Give it a second to load. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, Invest 90L is right here, in this area right here. And it's expected to skirt off. Oh, sorry about that. It's expected to skirt off over Florida, to the northeast, over the Atlantic Ocean, around this area right here, and to go over all the way over the Atlantic Ocean. So, yesterday, it was off the western coast of Cuba, over Matanzas, Cuba, the western coast of Cuba, and it was moving over Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico, and now it has made it into the Gulf of Mexico, the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. So now it's going to move over Florida, and as you can see, some of it is already over Florida, but the rest is going to move over Florida tonight into the early morning hours, and it's going to go over Florida. So this is actually I think this is like a 5-hour loop, if I'm correct. I stand to be corrected if I am incorrect, but it has the time. It has the time from 5 o'clock, from 5:30 up to now. Well, no, not 5:30 up to now. It has it from 5:30 all the way to 9:45 p.m. in the night. So it goes from 1,735 hours to 2,145 hours. So at 9 o'clock, if I look, I don't think I'm able to pause this, unfortunately. But, wait, can I pause this? Yes, I can. Okay, so let me go all the way to 9 p.m. Okay, so this is what it looks like by 9 p.m. Hasn't moved over Florida entirely yet, but some of it is moved over Florida, and it's moving over the northwestern Bahamas, over the Lucayan Archipelago, and some of those thunderstorms and patterns move over Florida, South Florida, and Lake Okeechobee in this area, and over the northern islands such as Andros Island, Nassau, Eleuthera, Abaco, and Grand Bahama. And that will move over Florida and may affect some of the northernmost islands, and will go over into the Atlantic, so which will be in this area right here. So let me go back a little bit. This is at 4:55. So some of the moisture and the thunderstorm patterns move over, or some of it is over Florida already. And if I do this loop right here, as you can see, it's going over southern Florida and over some of the islands of the Lucayan Archipelago and into the Atlantic Ocean. So this storm, it's not a storm yet. It's a very, very disorganized system, but it has a very low chance of development, so we're going to have to see. But I was looking at a longer range forecast yesterday, and it does have the storm eventually developing into a tropical storm with a pressure of around 998 millibars. So I'm going to take you guys to the forecast models in a minute, but for now, I am going to go to satellite imagery again. Just before we go to the models, I'm going to go to the Atlantic wide. So there are no more areas of interest apart from no more areas of interest apart from this area right here, which is, if I zoom in right there, apart from this one right here, which is by Florida and the Lucayan Archipelago. So there are a bunch of tropical waves right here moving. Sorry about that, that's the Caribbean. Let me zoom in it again. There are a lot of tropical waves moving over Africa in this area right here. Here we are, in this area right here. So there's one right here, pretty strong one here. I saw it yesterday, it was moving off Africa. It's finally off the coast. But it looks, honestly, it looks a bit better than Invest 90L back here. It looks a lot better than Invest 90L. It has more not more colder cloud thoughts, but there's a spot of minus 80 that I could see, and Invest 90L is extremely disorganized over Florida, and it's moving into parts of the Lucayan Archipelago, and the cloud tops aren't as cold as I expected. They're only touching around minus 69 to minus 70 degrees. So I'm wondering why they didn't list, the NAC didn't list this area right here of an interest, including this one right here as well. But they do have their reasons, because there are many things that affect storm development. It could be wind shear. Wind shear can affect it. Wind shear, if there's a lot of wind shear, then the storm will not develop properly. And if the temperature of the oceanic heat content is not correct, then the storm will not form. And there are many other things that affect it. The African Saharan dust, etc., etc. So, of course, I may understand why they could label this as an area of interest, because there's a lot of warm waters across the Lucayan Archipelago in Florida. There's a spot of 31. I'll show you guys that in a minute. But there's also low wind shear, and if I notice, you can also find a tiny spot. I don't think I can zoom in, but a small spot of minus 72, not minus 71, 72 cloud tops. So yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the forecast models now. So now we are here at the forecast models, and this is it right here. It's not labeled yet, but in this area right here, this C, as you can see, okay, yeah, there it is. So this is the GFS labeling it right here, and it has the pressure in millibars, okay, and also has the temperature of the cloud tops. That's wonderful. Okay, so let me go all the way in this area right here, right over Florida. I'm going to take a look right there. See what that gives me. Okay, that's better. Okay, so it has the temperature in Kelvin and the temperature in Celsius. It has that temperature right there in Celsius as well. That's wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to do a future forecast regions. I'm going to stay in the Western Atlantic. Okay, Western Atlantic. So it gives me a bigger picture. Okay, so I'm gonna do a future forecast for you guys. H-Wharf, no storms. It's not registering Invest 90L. I think only the GFS is registering this. Check the HMON, no storms. H-Wharf parent, no storms. Okay, so looks like only the GFS is recognizing the storm. That's why, because like I was saying, it's very disorganized and not that put together. So it has it starting from June 12th all the way to June 28th. So if I go from June 12th, this is June 12th, and it stays over Florida until Thursday, June 13th, and moves over the northernmost islands of the Bahamas, and eventually has a pressure of around 1,009 millibars, and eventually goes to 1,007, and probably may develop into a very weak tropical storm, around 40 miles per hour winds at the most, and eventually it just stalls for a little bit and then just moves over towards the northeast. And that's what we see there as well. So I want to see if I can get precipitation and moisture. Okay, not that. Sorry. Okay, so this shows me the moisture right here. So I'm going to show you guys this. Okay, so this area with the blue right here, these blue areas show a lot of moisture and a ton of moisture. So that moisture shows that there's a potential for a lot of thunderstorm development and rainfall. And as you can see, there's a high pressure system here. This was on June 8th. And these brown areas right here are a lot of dust. This is a lot of dry air, dust air, that storms do not do well in. So as you can see in this area, let me go all the way to June 10th, June 11th, which is today. See, there's a lot of moisture in this area, which I'll label right here. This area where the square is. So there's a ton of moisture, and that's where Invest 90L is at. That's why I'm sure the National Hurricane Center labeled that as an area of interest, because due to the fact that there's not a lot of dry air, and also the moisture, there's more moisture than dry air, a ton of moisture actually. So I'm sure that could support a possible storm, a low tropical storm in the near future. So forecasts, I'm done with the forecast models. Only the GFS is showing this storm. Now the GFS kind of underestimates storms. It is not really, I wouldn't say reliable, but it doesn't register storms that well. And that's something I don't like about the GFS that much. Because it doesn't recognize storms that well, and it's not the best when it comes to these storms, I don't really rely on the GFS. I typically rely on the H-Wharf and the HMON models, because those ones actually register storms. Because if you remember Hurricane Dorian in 2019, the GFS was saying that Dorian was going to be no more than around a Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane. But Dorian ended up being a Category 5. But the H-Wharf, when Dorian was around a Category 1 hurricane, the H-Wharf actually labeled it, saying that within the future forecast, it said that Dorian was going to become a Category 5 hurricane. And that was the outcome. That's why I tend to rely on the H-Wharf models more. But unfortunately, the H-Wharf is registering no storms. It's not registering Invest 90L. So we're stuck using the GFS model for now until further notice, I guess. So this is June 12th, and this is where it moves. So it just stalls in the Gulf of Mexico, and eventually goes over the Yucatan Peninsula, and it doesn't develop. That's where the GFS is taking it. It has it doing like a loop around the Yucatan, and it just stays like that until June 21st. That's what the GFS model has it doing. So I want to look at the H-Wharf, but unfortunately there's nothing there to look at, including the HMON. There's nothing there to look at either. So I guess I'm just going to have to wait until they put it there. They may or may not put it there soon. I hope they do, because I want to see what they turn this into, what this could be. Because I'm sure I'm not sure how bad it could be, but as of now, there is a lot of rainfall over Florida and probably some of the northern islands of the Lucayne Archipelago. So, analysis tools. Here we are. I'm going to do the ocean heat content, the sea surface temperatures. So, these temperatures tell me the actual heat content. And they update this, I think, probably once every 6 to 12 hours, if I'm correct. And this is June 11th right now. So I'm going to go to the Atlantic. So, here in the Atlantic, there is, here in the Atlantic, there are spots of 28s, 29s. And if you look very closely, if I zoom in, right here, in this area right here, there's a spot of 30, 32 actually, off of the coast of Western Andros. And another spot of 31, 32 off of the Florida coastline and the Florida Keys. The exact spot where Invest 90L is at, which could support the development of a potential storm. So, the Atlantic is very warm right now. 30s, 31s, 32s. I can see a spot of 32, very, very warm by Panama, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. There's a very, very hot content in that area. And also, if I go to the main development region, all the way back here, which is where Africa is, there's pretty warm waters, 28s, 29s, even a spot of 30 actually. So if any storms form in this area, they could form in this area right here, and they could do a loop around, could go near Florida or in the Caribbean area, which is in this area right here. So, in retrospect of that is a sign of pretty hot water. So because of that, I'm sure Invest 90L, in my opinion, I'm sure it will develop into at least a tropical depression, and it could become a minimal tropical storm in the coming days. It's not too far out to say, but it's still just prediction. And of course, it's not even anything yet. It's just an invest area. And of course, it may not even develop into anything. We've had a bit of a slow start to hurricane season, considering that we're 11 days in now, and nothing has formed yet. So we're just waiting as of now. Okay. So I want to take a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. The anomalies will tell me where are the areas that are above average and are average. So let me show you guys. So you see this 0 right here? This area that has a white, which is 0. These white areas right here, these patches of white, are the areas that are average for a season. So where those white areas are, it's saying that, okay, this area is average for the time of year. So since it's June, it's the summertime, clearly, of course, some areas may be warm. So that means that those white patches are average. But these tan areas that eventually turn into reds, those areas are extremely above average, very above average actually. So that could actually tell me that those areas can be primed for storm development. And it's true, because the areas right here off of the Lucayne Archipelago and Florida, where Invest 90L is at, if I zoom in, this area is at least around 2 to 2.8 degrees above average. And the area where the Lucayne Archipelago is around 2 degrees above average. So, in retrospect to that being above average, that means that Invest 90L does have a potential of development. It does have a potential of development because there's low wind shear in that area. There's also a ton of moisture, and the temperatures are very, very warm, and it's above average in that area. So that means that Invest 90L does have a very, very high chance of development. So, now that we are done with that, I'm going to move over to the Atlantic Ocean. So, let me refresh this actually 2-day model, okay? And as you can see, the National Hurricane Center has labeled it right here. So I am going to read that aloud for you guys. Here it is. Okay, so I will read this aloud. Okay. As of 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Tuesday, June 11, 2024, Eastern Gulf of Mexico and offshore southeast U.S. A broad area of low pressure over the eastern Gulf of Mexico is producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. The system is expected to move northeastward across Florida during the next day or so, and move offshore the U.S. southeast coast later this week. Environmental conditions are expected to be generally unfavorable, although some slow development is possible when the system is offshore of the U.S. southeast coast. Regardless, Regardless of development, heavy rainfall is already occurring and is expected to continue across portions of Florida during the next few days. For more information, see products issued by the Weather Prediction Center and local National Weather Service forecast offices. So, formation chance for the next 48 hours is very low. It's only 10%, and for the next 7 days, it is at 20%. So, as you can see down here, I will also read this out aloud as well. By forecaster Kelly of the National Weather Service. They have labeled this, like I said, at 10% of development in the next 48 hours. It has 10% chance of development in the next 48 hours, and a 20% chance of development through the next 7 days. So this system is very, very, like I said, disorganized, and as forecaster Kelly did mention, the environmental conditions, because of the environmental conditions, it is going to be a little bit unfavorable. Because of that, of course, it's in warm waters right now, like I mentioned earlier, but it is going to be moving over Florida over land, and because of that, there's also going to be some dry air moving in that area over the next few days, so it could cause development to be a bit unfavorable. Not to mention, it is moving into colder waters because it's moving to the northeast, and the northeast, if it goes more north, it's not going to be in that warm water, so it could stunt the development of the system. But of course, we are going to still have to watch and see what does occur, and what could possibly be made out of the storm, and we're going to have to watch that in the next 7 days. So that wraps it up for today, guys, and that was Invest 90L. So I hope the folks in Florida are watching this, because this could be a little significant, and it also could drop heavy rainfall and showers and some thunderstorms. So even if it doesn't develop into anything, I would recommend still keeping watch, because the point is that it's still a storm, and it can cause a lot of rainfall, and because of rainfall, it can be dangerous at times. So that's it for today, guys. My name is K.N from K.N Weather. I am signing out. Goodbye.